Hello, friends. Welcome back to Value Vintage Cards. So, in this video, I want to talk a little bit. My friend Jason and a few others were recently sharing some modern cards, shiny cards, if you will. And I always say that's kind of where I'm left out in the cold. I don't necessarily know a whole lot about them. I get easily overwhelmed at the amount of different products and the names and the premiums and the 10 of 10s and the shininess and I get lost. I don't understand it. How does somebody have 50 rookie cards? And I remember back in the day we'd kind of look at it and we weren't sure if we want to count a Diamond Kings as like a regular card, and that was one of the very few modifications that we'd have back in the 80s to choose from. But I also got thinking that I do buy some. I don't buy packs. I don't think I've bought a pack in years. Uh, but I do buy individual cards. And I want to say that I buy modern cards like a vintage collector. And I want to explain that. And I think really I've made this comment before, but like modern cards is our hope for the next, 50 years, 100 years. It is very true. The average person that's collecting vintage cards right now is, 40s and 50s and up. And a lot of times people will look at that and say, oh my gosh, what about the future? Well, the average 12-year-old isn't walking around with, Babe Ruth and Honus Wagner money. So we really shouldn't be too freaked out that they're more enamored with people they see on TV and the jerseys that are sold in the stores and all those things. Most of us were too. If you said who's my childhood heroes, it's Ryan Sandberg and Dale Murphy and David Cohn was my favorite pitcher, and Maddox was cool. But like, it's because we saw them. It was very hard to relate to Warren Spahn and Christy Mathewson at that stage of life. Um, I started appreciating them younger than probably most people did because I was kind of a vintage collector when I was 10. But even some of my good friends that are well diving into vintage and pre-war and all the unique things, they weren't. They might have collected stuff from a few years before they were born, but they weren't going back 50 years. So I do want to share a little bit of something and why I think modern cards is actually our hope and it's our pathway for the hobby. So when I looked at my collection, I'm going to pull just Lou Gehrig for this one. Like Lou Gehrig. So I look at some of these and these modern cards, and I will not be describing what they are. I mean, this one says Upper Deck on the front, so I guess it's an Upper Deck card. But what I like about these is they do give a neat little story. So it talks about maybe their first game or a big game or a World Series moment or something. So a young collector when they're opening packs, I mean, fortunately, Lou Gehrig will have some value, and maybe that's one they pull out and will remember, like, oh, that's a dollar card. It's not a common. Maybe they'll take the time to read it. That's the hope. You've got kind of his farewell moment. Um, got that captured a couple different ways. I have a Hall history. I just thought that was kind of neat. Right up on the back is cool for that. But I always like when it's like a candid set. Let it calm down there. That thing was going reflective. So Gehrig was elected in a special vote. So you can learn quite a bit. Um, Gehrig was a college player. Watch Pride of the Yankees. You'll know his family wanted to be an engineer. Um, let's see where else. Let me balance these in a little bit different order. I like these too. You get that kind of retro feel of, that's what he would look like on an 87 tops or an 80 tops or 56 tops. One of my favorite sets of 52 tops. And I definitely don't know if any of these are worth anything more than a buck. In fact, I probably didn't buy them if they're worth more than a buck. That's kind of my sweet spot. There are some that you can find that are modern that are well more than that, and there's one that I did pick up. for a couple reasons. So these relics, I know some people are deeply horrified that they cut up a jersey, and other people are of the perspective that it's really cool that us normal folks have an opportunity to own a little piece of a Lou Gehrig jersey. I'm not sure how many of these exist, and I'm not sure how many we need sitting in a back room at the Hall of Fame reserved or in one person's collection to look at a jersey. So it is kind of cool that we get a chance to, just have this and know that I've got a little pinstripe that Lou Gehrig, uh, may have worn hopefully in a game, and hopefully it's all up and true. But that has some value to it. That's a little bit of a valuable card, and it's neat that modern cards do that. And I was thinking about that, and that's always been the way, though, right? I mean, when I was a kid, this is how I learned. I looked at the back of these, and I realized, wow, Lou Gehrig's career average was 340, and quite sincerely, like I knew the backs of these. Like that was what I read, what I memorized, what I learned. These give such neat little write-ups and stories. Those are little kind of like regional offshoots, but they're everywhere. Um, you know, that's also from 80s era. This is a 1980 Kramer Sport. Again, let me look at the price. These have always been our low-cost way to get a vintage set. In this one, I mean, 85 Donruss. I must have snagged that at the LCS, so that's 20 cents down for a Lou Gehrig. I think that's super cool. Um, but that wasn't like an 80s thing. In the 70s, we were doing the same thing. We're celebrating with 3D kind of cards. We're doing these really cool all-time greats and all-time leaders and grand slams and home runs and games and wins and shutouts. So you kind of get an idea of perspective of where people were, and even restaurants. Super cool Shakey's card. Back of that. Let's see if I can get that to come in. Holy cow, that thing is going crazy shine. But the back of that shows it's from Shakey's out west. So they did a whole bunch of different cards. So a good way for folks to learn. So that kind of covers the 70s, and um, going back into the 60s. We still had a lot of different options. So you get these little subsets here. Same thing. You're going to get right up on the back and stats and everything else with that. These scoops, baseball scoops. Um, Same thing, kind of like newspaper style. So in the back, you get a whole write up of the event mentioned on the front. Um, Tops would insert into some sets. You'd have different memorable moments. And then even 60 and 61, we had the Fleers. So those are great sets. I still pick those up. That's still, I mean, that to me, that's mind bending. I get the big names and low grades, but um, I mean, most of these Hall of Famers you're getting for like $1 or two. It's insane how affordable it is. So I always just want to keep that kind of in perspective as to what's out there. Um, and some of the post playing days that are in sets are actually still pretty big bucks. So I'm going to throw a few of those at you too. 67, the Venezuelan Retirado set. Pick up a Gehrig there. Going back to 47, still post playing days, but this set, Sports Exchange, you end up with a whole bunch of different post playing day cards, a few that are current in that set, but a lot of them that are post playing days, and that one's such a great image. I absolutely love that card. So the Sports Exchange was a great set. One of my favorites Propaganda Montiel. Very tough set. So you got Cuban, you got Venezuelan, you got hand cuts, you got all these different things, and it's still just ways of remembering players that were retired. And then I'll show you a couple because I have some playing days cards as well, fortunately. The oldest, I think this is the oldest Gehrig I've got. Um, could use some more Gehrigs in my world, but W565, that's that little mini set that I've actually completed because there's only 4 baseball players in it. But that's a little teeny tiny hand cut image. It's kind of interesting little images. They've grown on me, but that's a somewhat affordable Lou Gehrig. None of his are real affordable, but that one's on the better side. That's a big one. 33 DeLong. And then one of them that I somewhat recently snagged. This is a set that I absolutely think is ridiculously underrated. It's not the Gaudi, it's the worldwide gum. So it's the Canadian issue. Um, this one's authentic altered. I'm not 100% sure why. If I show that as close as I can, I'm sure there's been something. It doesn't, when I measured it, it looks like it measures right. They said they think maybe there was some color added along a crease or something. I'm not sure. But I'm going to count that as overall solid. And I love these because the back you get English and French. So it's printed in Canada. It's very clear. Worldwide gum, Montreal. So it looks just like the Gaudi. Um, I think it's mind blowing. Some seem to go for a little bit of a premium. Some seem to go at a discount, but they are somewhere between 5 and 10% of the population. I think most of them, when we looked at the grading companies, seem to fall in somewhere around 7%. So I'm not trying to focus on just that one card, but there's definitely some opportunities out there for some really neat things. But I wanted to do this video more so as an acknowledgement of my own kind of bias, I guess, against recent cards, new cards. You know, some of us in the community are hardcore vintage, but also like moderns. But I don't think we get to hear if, for most of us, the 10-year-old version of that didn't have something like this. So today's 10-year-old is going to open up one of these packs, take a look at this, flip it over, and say, huh. So what this guy doing is, next to last year. Oh, he had 37 homers with 159 RBIs, and where is his average? The average isn't on here. What? It's really weird. Okay, um, so that's a weird one. But you start looking at the stats. You start reading the stories. You start, understanding they're above common. Why? Who is that guy? And I think that's how you build a vintage community that's sustainable for infinity years. I think the card companies are brilliant for always keeping opportunities. I just showed you 60s, 70s, 80s, current. I mean, but they're keeping Lou Gehrig in front of us. Um, I'm thankful. It's nice to have opportunity to buy some of these new cards and continue growing the Lou Gehrig collection. But it's also great for the young kids to have a chance to learn about somebody that we're all kind of fascinated with and excited to have, and at some age and stage in life and whatnot, able to actually acquire something of. So that's all I got. It's my kind of lesson to myself that I should be more open to modern and at least learning about it enough to be dangerous and yeah, enjoying our vintage world in the modern card community. So that's it. Catch y'all on the next one. Take care.